At 4:42 in the morning on the 18th of June, 2021, Deputy Kyle Fangman pulled up to a farmhouse 7 miles west of Tama, Iowa. The call had come in just minutes earlier. A man had been shot. When Fangman walked through the door, what he encountered was not what he expected. Karina Cooper was sitting on top of her husband's body in his recliner. She was rubbing her face against his. She was screaming. Ryan Cooper's blood was across her cheeks, through her hair, soaked into her clothes. His face had been shot twice at close range. His body was already cold. The blood on his face was already drying. That image stayed with everyone who saw it. It was the kind of scene that does not leave a person. And it raised a question almost immediately, not out loud, but quietly, in the minds of the people standing in that room. Because grief looks like many things. But this looked like something else. Ryan Roy Cooper was 42 years old. He was a fourth-generation farmer, born in Waterloo, Iowa in 1979, raised on the same land his family had worked for decades. He grew up alongside his brother Aaron and his sister Michelle, and from childhood he understood what it meant to belong somewhere. Friends described him as quiet and generous. He was the kind of man who would leave his own property in the middle of a storm to help a neighbor first. He loved Iowa State Cyclones football, cold bush lights, and anything with a motor he could take apart and rebuild. He had married Karina Alpers at Zion Lutheran Church. Together they had 3 children. They lived at 1846 K Avenue, a rural property where Ryan farmed alongside Aaron, who lived about a mile down the road. The evening of June 17 had been unremarkable. Karina had spent time with the family at a local sports complex, picked up pizza on the way home, and returned with Ryan and the children around 8 in the evening. Ryan settled into his recliner in the living room. That was his usual place to sleep. Karina put the younger children to bed upstairs and the house grew quiet. At least, that is what the surface of the night looked like. What was happening underneath it was entirely different. At 3:31 in the morning, Karina sent a heart emoji on Snapchat. The person on the other end replied. What followed in those messages was not a conversation between 2 people saying goodnight. It was a set of final instructions. The message read, "Remember those casings. No ifs, ands, or buts." Karina responded within 15 seconds. Absolutely 100%. Then came the final sign-off. Okay, babe. Seriously putting the phone down. Have to get this done. He told her he was going dark and not to contact him until after he had left her home. He wrote that he loved her. Then his phone went silent. Sometime between 3:32 and 4:30 in the morning, Ryan Cooper was shot twice on the left side of his face with a .22 caliber rifle. Both shots were fired at close range. Gunpowder searing was visible on his skin. Both wounds were independently fatal. There were no exit wounds. Ryan never moved from the recliner. Blood flow patterns showed that he remained reclined after the shots. He died in the same chair where he had fallen asleep, in his own home, while his 3 children slept upstairs. At approximately 4:30 in the morning, Karina did not call 911. She called Ryan's brother, Aaron. Aaron, a volunteer firefighter who lived minutes away, immediately called 911 himself while racing toward the house. The Tama County Sheriff's Office received that call at approximately 4:35 in the morning. During the call, Karina could be heard screaming in the background. At one point she handed the phone to her teenage son and told him to speak to the dispatcher himself. Aaron arrived before the deputies. What he found in that dark living room was an image he would carry for years. Karina sitting on Ryan's body, rubbing her face against his, covered in his blood, not performing CPR, not calling his name, not doing anything that resembles what a person does when they are trying to help someone. Ryan's body was cold. The blood on his face was drying. There was nothing left to do. Aaron checked for signs of life anyway, the way a brother would, the way someone does when they refuse to accept what they already know. Deputy Fangman arrived 7 minutes after the 911 call. Another deputy described Karina as almost completely inhibited, so overwhelmed she could barely speak. And yet, on the right side of the recliner, Karina's phone was found with its torch turned on. She had been active in that dark room before calling for help. The crime scene told a story that did not fit a random attack. There were no signs of forced entry anywhere. Not a door, not a window, not the garage. Nothing of value was missing. Valuables were sitting in plain sight throughout the house, the garage, the vehicles. On the floor near the recliner, a single .22 caliber shell casing was found. One casing. Despite 2 shots having been fired. And no firearm was discovered anywhere at or near the scene. A .22 rifle already in the family's gun safe was tested and ruled out as the murder weapon. Something had gone slightly wrong with whatever plan had been set in motion that night. But not wrong enough to stop it. Karina told deputies her marriage was in a good place. She denied any affairs. She said she had heard a loud noise, thought it might be her husband snoring, called out to him, got no response, and then walked into the living room. That was her account. The investigation was taken up jointly by the Tama County Sheriff's Office, the Iowa Division of Criminal Investigation, and the Tama County Attorney's Office. As weeks turned into months with no arrests, Ryan's family waited. His sister Michelle began writing notes for a victim impact statement the day after the murder. Not because she had answers yet, but because she already knew, the way people who love someone always know before the proof arrives, that the truth was going to be something unbearable. Houston William Danker was approximately 24 years old when Ryan Cooper died. He was 19 years younger than Karina. He had been a client at her home salon, where she worked part-time as a stylist out of the rural property on K Avenue. The affair began in approximately late 2020. By September of that year, Ryan had quietly removed Karina from the family business phone plan. A small action, but a telling one. Ryan's sister Michelle later found, among his personal files, a phone bill page with a handwritten post-it note. It read Houston D., followed by a phone number. Ryan had been tracking the relationship. He had known. His best friend, Leroy Bradley, confirmed that Ryan told him about the affair directly in March 2021. When investigators first asked Karina about Danker, she became immediately upset. She described him as her friend, dismissed rumors as nothing more than the result of him being a client who also let her babysit his children. She never mentioned his name voluntarily. It surfaced only when someone else brought it up. In his own early interviews, Danker described the relationship similarly. He called himself her gay best friend. He acknowledged that people in Tama talked, but attributed it to the hair appointments and nothing more. But the Snapchat messages told a different story entirely. When forensic analysts recovered those messages, what they found was not a casual friendship. Karina and Danker had exchanged declarations of love. They had talked about getting married. They had discussed having children together through IVF, even though Karina had had her tubes tied. Karina referred to Ryan as a sperm donor. In one exchange, after Danker sent an explicit message, Karina responded with a comment about hoping for a rogue semi on the road. A big accident. No survivors. She was talking about Ryan. That kind of language does not appear in a text exchange between two people who are simply infatuated. That is the language of someone who has already crossed a line in their mind, someone who has already moved the person they are married to out of the category of human being and into the category of problem to be solved. Multiple friends came forward with statements that painted a consistent picture of Karina's attitude toward her husband. One witness testified that she had heard Karina say she wanted to shoot Ryan in the face as far back as 2018. Leroy Bradley placed a similar statement in autumn 2020. Ryan's best friend, Brian Morrison, testified that in autumn of that same year, Karina said it directly to Ryan's face. The comment was not made lightly. Morrison described it as sharp and deliberate. He also witnessed Karina telling Ryan she hated him and wished he were dead, not once, but on multiple occasions. There is a point in every case like this where you have to sit with an uncomfortable question. At what point does what someone says become something that should be taken seriously? Most people say things in anger they do not mean. Most people move through moments of frustration and resentment without acting on them. The line between venting and planning is supposed to be clear. In this case, that line had been crossed long before the night of June 17, 2021. On the 11th of May, 2021, 5 weeks before Ryan was killed, Houston Danker conducted a series of Google searches. He searched for ways to kill a person. He searched killing someone with antifreeze. He searched sodium sulfate. He searched how to kill someone without them knowing. Those searches happened 5 weeks before Ryan Cooper was shot in his recliner at close range. After Ryan's death in July, Danker conducted more searches. He looked up where murderers go to prison in Iowa. He searched medium security prisons. He searched how long forensic data analysis takes. He searched how to delete Snapchats. He searched how to get away with murder. He searched for the best lawyer in Iowa. 4 days after Ryan's death, Karina's Snapchat account was deleted remotely. Her phone had already been seized by investigators at that point. Someone deleted it from another device. The defense strategy Karina's attorney presented at trial was built on a single argument. Houston Danker had done this. Houston Danker had planned it. Houston Danker had manipulated Karina. Houston Danker had drawn her into a fantasy world, and by the time reality set in, she was already too deep to get out. The opening statement lasted roughly 2 minutes and repeated Danker's name over and over like a drumbeat. He killed Ryan Cooper. He shot Ryan Cooper in the face. He lured Karina. He manipulated her. He had her living in a dream world. And it is worth pausing here, because that argument is not without a thread of logic. Danker was younger. He was more aggressive in his pursuit. The planning, the searches, the weapon, the execution all carried his fingerprints. There are cases where one person in a conspiracy carries the majority of the moral weight. But the Snapchat messages existed. Absolutely 100%. That was Karina's response, written in her own hand, within 15 seconds of being reminded to collect the shell casings. That was not a woman in a dream world. That was a woman who understood exactly what was about to happen and had confirmed her agreement in writing, 1 hour before her husband was shot in his sleep. Karina told her teenage son to stop sleeping on the living room couch near his father's recliner in the days before the murder. She was clearing the area, making sure the path to the recliner was unobstructed. Her own child became an unwitting participant in the preparation. The murder weapon was traced through a co-worker of Danker's named Bradley Seek. Danker had given Seek 3 guns in late 2023, explaining that he was moving in with a girlfriend who had a daycare and needed to get rid of the firearms. One of those guns was a Ruger 10/22 rifle. Seek held on to them for 6 to 8 months before handing them over to the Tama County Sheriff's Office in spring 2024. A forensic criminalist conclusively matched the single shell casing found at the crime scene to that specific Ruger 10/22. The firearm, it was confirmed, cannot fire accidentally. Every pull of the trigger fires a round. No accidental discharge. No other explanation. The plan had been to leave no trace. The Snapchat message at 3:31 in the morning was a reminder to Karina to collect every casing after the shooting. All of them. She was supposed to clean up what remained. But she had missed one. A single .22 caliber shell casing on the floor near the recliner, overlooked in the dark. That one casing, smaller than a finger, became the physical thread that tied the murder weapon to Danker, tied Danker to the scene, and tied both of them to the planning. The life insurance policy paid out 6 months after Ryan's death. On the 22nd of December, 2021, Karina received a check for $514,882 from Shelter Life Insurance. She cashed it through Chelsea Savings Bank. In the months that followed, she used the money to pay off debts, opened 2 business storefronts in Tama, renovated her home, and eventually moved to a new property about a mile from where Ryan had died. Every one of those things was something Ryan had opposed during his lifetime. A bank loan officer later testified that Karina's accounts had been repeatedly overdrawn in the period before the murder. Nearly 3 years passed before an arrest was made. On the 19th of February, 2024, Karina Cooper was taken into custody at her home in Tama by the Iowa Division of Criminal Investigation Major Crime Unit and the Tama County Sheriff's Office. She was charged with murder in the first degree and held on $1 million bond. She pleaded not guilty on the 14th of March, 2024. Houston Danker was arrested on the 29th of April, 2024, in Cedar Rapids, charged with first-degree murder for acting in concert with Karina. The trial began on the 1st of July, 2025, at the Lynn County Courthouse in Cedar Rapids. Over 6 days, the prosecution built its case layer by layer. The forensic evidence. The digital records. The insurance payout. The Google searches. The Snapchat messages. The witnesses who had heard Karina talk about shooting Ryan in the face years before it happened. Ryan and Karina's teenage son took the stand and testified that his mother had told him to stop sleeping near his father's recliner in the days before the murder. On day 6, Karina Cooper took the stand herself. She described her marriage as good and normal. She acknowledged the affair with Danker but called it an online fantasy, something like playing a video game, a chat room scenario where nothing was meant to be real. She said that when the fantasy crossed into the physical world she was disgusted. She claimed she had lied to investigators out of fear, not guilt. The prosecution's closing argument focused on the scene in that dark living room. The image of Karina sitting on Ryan's body, rubbing her face against his, soaking herself in his blood. The argument was that she had not anticipated the blowback from the shots. She had not expected to have blood on her. And when she realized what she looked like, she made a decision in the space of seconds. She would make the blood look like grief. She would press her face into his wounds, and when someone walked through that door, it would appear that she had thrown herself onto her husband in a moment of desperate, inconsolable love. It would look like a wife who could not accept that her husband was gone. It would look like that. But it would not be that. The jury began deliberating at approximately 1:18 in the afternoon on the 11th of July, 2025. At 5 in the evening, they returned guilty of murder in the first degree. Karina Cooper was visibly emotional. At 5:03 in the afternoon, she was handcuffed and led out of the courtroom. On the 12th of August, 2025, moments before jury selection was set to begin in his own separate trial, Houston Danker pleaded guilty to first-degree murder. His attorney said Danker wanted to accept responsibility and spare his family, the Cooper family, and the community the ordeal of another trial. On the 19th of September, 2025, Judge Lars Anderson sentenced Karina Cooper to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Under Iowa law, for first-degree murder, that sentence is mandatory. There is no negotiation. There is no parole board to appeal to. The sentence is the sentence. Aaron and Heather Cooper are now raising Karina and Ryan's 3 children alongside their own. Heather's victim impact statement described sitting in her vehicle holding those children, their aunt, with nothing but pure love and fear inside her. She talked about watching Aaron in those first nights after the murder, unable to sleep, haunted by what he had been the first to see. The images left in his head by that dark living room, by his brother's cold body, by the scene he could never unsee. Michelle Wilson, Ryan's sister, delivered the family's final message at sentencing. She told Karina there was no sentence that could adequately punish her for what she had done. She said she would waste no time and no energy addressing her. And then she said what she had come to say. Go to hell. Houston Danker was sentenced to life without parole on the 3rd of October, 2025, plus $150,000 in restitution to Ryan's estate. His attorney described him as blinded emotionally, spiritually, and morally. The judge told Danker he would have plenty of time to think about that. Ryan Roy Cooper was a 4th-generation Iowa farmer who died in his recliner while his children slept upstairs. He had tracked the affair quietly. He had removed Karina from the phone plan. He had told his best friend what was happening. He had watched it unfold and stayed anyway, the way people do when they have children and land and decades invested and nowhere else to put all of it. He was quiet and generous and the kind of man who left his own property during a disaster to help his neighbors first. He did not know that the danger was already inside his house. 3 children grew up knowing what they will always know now. That is the part of this story that does not resolve with a verdict, that does not end when a courtroom door closes, that continues forward into every ordinary day those children will ever live. The Cooper family name belongs to the land now in a different way than it did before June 2021. It belongs to Aaron, who got there first and can never forget what he found. It belongs to Michelle, who started writing her victim impact statement the day after the murder because she already understood. And it belongs to 3 children who needed their father and got 4 walls and a life sentence instead. Whether a different set of choices at any earlier point could have changed the outcome is the kind of question that does not have a useful answer. What is certain is that the planning was deliberate, the warnings were present long before the end, and the single shell casing on the floor of a dark living room in rural Iowa was the one small mistake that made sure none of it could be undone.